CommanderX, tough loss. Maybe one that is a bit surprising in how it went, because you guys started pretty well into the week against the Mayhem, I would think. I also think like that was sort of your messaging. You guys were showing good performances. Like that was a competitive match. So what happened today?
Yeah, that was kind of a feeling after the Florida game. Obviously, we knew Florida was going to be a tough game. They did so well. They went to Hawaii. We knew Atlanta was going to be a tough game, even though they had a bad stage one. But they've always been our toughest opponent in scrim. So we weren't sort of fooled by their record. You know, we knew what we were in store for. And yeah, it was definitely like almost like a kind of bittersweet uplift in the camp, I guess, after the Florida game, because I think it probably was our best performance in terms of fixing mistakes from the previous cycle, the main melee, and just the way we played. And it's not that matchup isn't actually one we played against all that often in scrims. So we thought it went like pretty well considering, and obviously considering the talent Mayhem had. But today felt very different from that, as I imagine it probably did for a lot of people watching as well. Very much felt like we got blown out of the water today by Atlanta. Like there were moments on Lijiang when it was close, and then we kind of just got rolled over. Like you think they big time banks on both the other maps, and if anything, the matchup is easier for us on defense than it is on attack. So that was definitely a bit of a gut punch when both of those went through. And then we really struggled to get the sort of engages we wanted on both Ike and Dorado.
Right. Do you have an explanation as to how that difference comes to be? Is it just like Atlanta being very good in this meta, or what's the dynamic there?
I think if you look at Atlanta, this is if you look at, obviously they picked up Unter recently. When I see the comp Atlanta is playing, this has Unter written all over it, because it is the 6 Atlanta players on 6 heroes the Atlanta players are good at. And this screams to the way Unter tries to set up his teams and his sort of, like, I guess, ethos about Overwatch. So it's all their guys on the best players. And we played against Double Shield a bit more since, obviously, we played yesterday after the Florida game, and we played against it a load yesterday as well from a couple of other teams. And we thought we were pretty confident against it. We obviously watched the Houston Atlanta game, and we thought we were watching what Houston were doing, and we were like, it felt like we have a better idea on how we want to do the execution on these dives than Houston did, so we should be fine. You know what I mean? Like, this feels like where it's going wrong for Houston. We have an idea of what we want to do instead of that. So that should be okay. But it felt really oppressive today. Like, the exact version they played with the Mercy and the Ash Echo isn't actually something we've run into very often. And the D.Va. The D.Va's a big part of it as well, I think. So it just felt like we really couldn't move today. Like, it felt so oppressive. So I think maybe ultimately we've made a mistake, like in terms of the comps we selected. But it's one of those weird ones where we've not, like, the version Atlanta are playing, this is the first time I think we played against it, maybe for more, like, properly, like for more than just like a map or a defense or a few fights where people are doing swaps. Lots of teams prefer the Brig, lots of teams use the Sigma, lots of teams do like Kree Reaper, or like a full like anti-dive thing. And that's what we've had success against, and that's what we had success, or against Florida with as well. But yeah, it felt very rough with the Ash and the Echo. It felt like we couldn't move versus their DPS today.
Makes sense, yeah. How did you think about, like, when those bans came out? What was your gut feeling? Like, did you have a comp in mind that could work? Was it something that you guys were confident in, where you're like, oh my god, this is bad for us? Or what was the general idea there?
No, well, we sort of considered Double Shield for a little bit, because it maybe feels like Reinhardt's gone right, so maybe Rush feels really rough all of a sudden. And also, if you remember last cycle, a lot of teams, particularly the Korean teams, I think Florida themselves did this a lot, were actually playing the comp we were playing yesterday, like the Ash, Echo, Winston, D.Va or Winston Zarya, and then Anna Mercy. Like, teams were just playing that. So for us, that very much seemed like the obvious answer. And that's kind of where we started. Do you know what I mean? Like, does it actually work? What doesn't it be? What does it be? And yeah, and it felt good in scrims. Like, it felt like we had a clear idea of, like, it's not like we, rolled over all our scrims, but it felt like it went well enough, and we knew why it went wrong when it did go wrong. So we felt pretty okay with that, and obviously the game against Florida only reinforced those opinions, really. When I think back to those Florida maps, it was definitely like all those maps could have gone the other way, you know? Obviously against us as well as for us with an Ambani, but they all could have gone our way as well. So it kind of just reinforced our opinions. So this kind of, I guess, blindsided us a bit.
All right. What's the idea with the Hanzo there, with the Diva Winston comps?
So the idea with the Hanzo is how a lot of teams try and set up when they play this sort of double shield is they know we're going to dive. They know how scary it is to have like a nano monkey going into a nano primal. So they will try very hard to kite that. They want a lot of Orissas do. Like this is what OG did to us yesterday, and this is what other teams have done in scrims. Had to be careful not to say names of stuff there. And it's also what Gator tried to do today. Is the Orisa will hold the line as so the Hanzo gives us a lot of shield break, and it means we realize that sometimes Haddy can just solo kill with the nano primal because it's so good, but it means we can then more consistently kill that Orisa who is trying to hold the line. Then as long as Haddy survives, we kill the Orisa, then we can just walk forward as a team and use more ults if we need to, or just walk forward if we don't need to.
Right. Now, across the league, not only is the meta pretty volatile in whatever everyone is playing, the results are also volatile, especially if we're looking at like in the other region. Is this something where we still don't know what's actually going to be top dog, or do you think any team has it figured out yet?
No, I don't think any team does have it figured out, because we definitely went through, I think, when was it? So we obviously all the teams have only played a week and a half, if that. So I think last week everyone was just playing everything. Do you know what I mean? Teams would defend with one comp and attack with the other, and everyone's clearly just trying to get like as many iterations versus different iterations as possible to try and figure stuff out quickly. And then Monday, I think it was. No, we didn't play Monday because we played up to Sunday, had Monday off. So Tuesday, so 4 days before our Florida game, we start seeing this like rush comp that a few teams have played where it's like the Monkey, Diva, Reaper, Echo, Moira, Lucio. And we were like, this seems kind of wild. And then we were really struggling against that. So we sort of did like, I guess loads of teams went through variations of this where you go into like emergency mode. Like, let's look at this loads. Let's make sure we have it figured out for where we expect to play it. So we put a bunch of attention to that. And like I said before, double shield didn't really come on our radar in the same way. Like for us, we like that was the comp we were kind of concerned about, like this rush comp, because it felt like it was new, and especially when it was like we hadn't seen it ever. And then we played two teams one day, and both these teams are playing it, and we played both of them last week, and they weren't playing it. So we were like, these teams are pretty lost in this comp. Decided also like come to the conclusion they can't figure it out and have just like copy and pasted it. So we were like, maybe it's come from one of the teams that we've not been scrimming, aka one of the teams in our matches. So that's the one we were most worried about. But then, like I said, yesterday especially, a lot of double shield from a lot of teams who weren't doing it before as well. So I think to answer your question, nobody has it figured out, and there's a lot of patchwork stuff going on for all the teams at the moment.
Right, and as we saw this week, you also have now one less guy to help to figure it out. Of course, I'm talking about the parting ways of Reprise and your team. What does that mean? Like, we saw the interview with Fisher saying, like, there won't be an immediate departure or a reinvention of the wheel or whatever for your team. But what does it mean for your shift in responsibilities across the week, let's say?
Not a huge difference in terms of like the type of stuff we're doing. Like I guess for context, our previous setup was Reprise would do a lot of like the one-on-one stuff, and Fisher would do a lot of the macro stuff anyway. Mm-hmm. Then I do some of the one-on-one stuff, and I do a lot of the scouting. So all that's really happened is I've picked up the one-on-one stuff, or like the slightly larger share of it, and Fisher's picked up the rest. And the reality is, obviously, there's just a bit less done of everything. if you know what I mean. Like I have
Yep.
to spend less time doing scouting, and there'll be less time dedicated to one-on-ones as there were before. Just there's slightly less of everything. So, but in terms of the structure hasn't really changed. We've just, I guess, the very classic thing you do if someone leaves a job, right? You just take responsibilities and put them on somebody else.
Yep.
I guess until reinforcements come.
Interesting. Are reinforcements coming? And in what position then?
Yeah, so Fisher is head coach, staying head coach, and assistant coach we are looking for.
Right. Now, okay, let's tally up where we are with the score at the moment, and also with looking into the short-term future, and then what things are coming up for you, because the next 2 games both go to Texas, and those teams have been proven to be no slouches. Of course, this is a hard strength of schedule for you guys during June Joust. When we look at the strength of schedule in the next stage, in the Summer Showdown, we also notice that you then have SparkR ready. So with everything coinciding, probably it taking some time to find the assistant coach, having really strong opponents. Is this something like where you say, okay, whatever happens, happens, and then we cut the season in half, and then we start like seriously competing when we have our hitscan ace?
No, I don't think so. Like we're still playing to win, you know? And the feeling we had after the Florida game, I don't think was a fluke. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like, because we still made plenty of mistakes in that game, right? It wasn't like we played our perfect game and we came close. It's like we played a pretty good game and we came close. With the current roster, and also with just the 2 of us in the coaching team. So I think we can still compete in all these things. I think Houston obviously didn't look great against Atlanta either. So obviously, you know, I think both us and Houston are in almost a pretty similar boat in terms of, and we played similar comps, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're having us very similar conversations to what we're having right now. Dallas are a real wild card, because Dallas are always the wild card. From what I understand, Pine is still in Korea, which means he most likely won't play unless he arrives, because we are Dallas' first game of the June Joust, which means we don't get to see Dallas play. And Dallas are also one of the least predictable teams in the league, and they still don't have a hit scan, so they're probably still going to be doing something kind of weird to work around that. So that game's scary in the sense that we know they're good, and we have no idea what they're going to. So we just have to try and, what's the word? Approach it very broadly and be ready for everything. But no, we're certainly still trying to win these games. We're not writing them off. I think, like I said, the Dallas one is the tough one. I mean, they're the main Melee champions. Everyone saw how well they did. They've got impressive players. And they're a creative team, right? Like we saw the comps they came up with, like to the degree that everyone started copying them because they were doing so well and finding it so hard to play against Dallas. And that obviously kind of suits a hero band tournament. So that one we're worried about, but the Houston one, I think, definitely much better chance. But I think, again, like we've scrimmed Dallas before, and we've done fine against them. So both games are still winnable, but I think you are right in terms of, you look at the second half of our season is easier in terms of strength of schedule than the first half, for sure.
Yeah. Now, I think a lot of fans, if I read the discourse around the team correctly, is I think a lot just based on how you built this team, a lot of fans came over from British Hurricane, right? Of course, they're used to having basically perfect records for a long time. It's also like frequently the discourse how good European Overwatch is, how it holds up in competitive play, like what the record means. How do you contextualize all this? Is Overwatch League just a different ball game? Are you guys somehow away from the potential that this team or the core of this team once had? Is it the circumstances on the ping? What do you put it down to that you're maybe not even showing the performances that we know this team is capable of?
let me think about that for a second. It's a difficult one. It's, as with most things, it's a multitude of things.
For sure.
I think one part of it is one thing. I worked with Talon for a bit, and this I worked with Talon when Face was there, and this is when Talon had their very good gauntlet run. And what was quite surprising, I imagine for a lot of people from the outside, was a team from a weaker region, a non-competitive region, doing very well in this tournament, right? Because normally the teams that come from Australia or the other teams that come from Pacific, they really struggle to compete. And I think a big part of it is down to who you get to play against. Like in Australia, obviously I worked with Drop Bears for a bit as well. You don't get a lot of opportunity to play good teams every time. So your practice environment just isn't as good. Consider had is we played all the Korean teams. Like the scrim schedule looked like a Korean contenders team's scrim schedule, or like a mix with some of the Chinese teams, So it was high level practice every day. And I think, for example, in Hurricane, we didn't have that. So even though we were dominant and it wasn't the same, we get to play against these like same level or elite level teams day in, day out. So I think there's definitely an adjustment period in terms of like the stepping up of that. And also the nature of the competition. Like one advantage that we had in contenders is all the contenders teams play each other all the time. So we were never surprised by anything. Like the only time we got surprised is if you remember when Obey Alliance just ran Mystery Heroes against us.
Yeah.
So that's surprising because they didn't know until the doors opened what they were going to be on either. So that one was, but like, I think who was it? I think I was talking to Hell before we picked up the Hurricane. He was saying playing against the old Hurricane is like you can do well against them in scrims or you can do well against them in one official, but by the time the actual match happens or you play them again, they've downloaded you. We know everything. Well, we don't quite have the same opportunity in Overwatch League because obviously everyone's a lot more, I guess, I don't know what the word is. Everyone, obviously you don't scrim the teams you're going to play. Whereas in contenders, there's like such a small pool that you just accept.
So theoretically then, like you guys skipping the first week maybe would be an advantage because you get to download not only the meta, but also potentially opponent you're playing against?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's true for all teams, to be honest. Like the more information you have, the better. And we've sort of, it is what it is, but maybe we got a little bit unlucky that we were Florida's first game, we'll be Dallas's first game. And Atlanta only played yesterday. So again, you're sort of going in with less preparation. But saying that, Atlanta played exactly what they played yesterday. We all got to watch it, we all got to talk about it. And we still got this one wrong, quite clearly, So it's not the be all and end all. So I think to sort of come back to it, I think some of it is just the strength of all the teams, right? Especially you look at the Overwatch League teams this year compared to some of the Overwatch League teams last year, it's a much different ball game,
Right.
And I think there is an element of there's still an adjusting period of everyone getting used to each other. And obviously we are changing comps, with the hero bans, everything's completely new. So especially in these first couple of weeks and even next week, it's a bit of a wild west. So obviously sometimes that works for you, sometimes that works against you.
Is the new Fusion University team then maybe going to help you guys in some sense, being able possibly to have like high quality scrim partners at adequate ping?
Well, or maybe I should have clarified that because at the moment we're always playing on East Coast servers. Even when we play, say, Hurricane or something, we make them play on East Coast. They're not super keen for it. But we play on the ping because we're always going to have to play on the ping.
Sure, makes sense, yeah.
Obviously, not against Paris, but 2 games out of 16, and they're both in the second half of the season as well. It just makes sense for us to play all our games on high ping. So now we're getting that better practice, but obviously I think we've maybe missed that compared to, say, some of the Korean rookies who have come into the league. Maybe that's a better way of phrasing it.
For sure, yeah. Have you played against the New Fusion Uni yet?
No. Well, I talked to Chris the other day. So I was like, oh, here you go. You made a team. You made a team. Do you want to play us? Because we had an open block because why was it? Oh yeah, someone cancelled because they had a media thing for the Overwatch 2. So I was like, sod's law, okay. We now need a last minute scrim. So I was talking to Chris about it. But because they are entering, I don't know if this is public. I presume it is. But they're entering contenders.
Yes.
That's public. I think they might have already played actually, yeah. But because they're doing that, like most of the contenders teams, they don't want to play hero band because it's very it's rubbish practice, right?
Yeah.
Especially Europe still playing a lot of Rush. Do you want to play hero bands where Reinhardt's banned? It's not very good practice for you if you've got a tournament next week.
Yeah.
But also it's not very good practice for us to play against it.
Yeah.
To play against no ban. So there's definitely it's been a little bit weird this cycle just because Overwatch League and contenders didn't line up. And especially because we normally use contenders teams for our warm-ups before matches. But obviously people aren't interested.
Yeah. Maybe as a last point, sort of like for the fans looking forward to the next matches, how big is SparkR for you guys, do you think? As just an additional option for you to choose from?
I think he's massive. Like, I think a lot of people have said it before, but he's super talented. He really can play everything. And I think now add something just in terms of the way we can structure our comps and our teams. Like, I think Shax and Hybrid are both very talented, but talented in niches. Whereas SparkR, I think, can very much be the glue that we put the right pieces behind. We know how good he is. Obviously, a lot of the boys have played with him before. They know how good he is. And also, it just gives us more options. Especially when we go into these hero bans and comps all over the place. Just having all these extra options can only benefit. Obviously, it makes it a bit harder because you've got to try and shuffle 4 players around to figure out who fits best where, but that's like a good problem to have, Too many options is a good problem. So I think SparkR will make a big difference. It'll be good to have like fresh energy as well. Like, I think anytime previous teams you sign a new player or you bring a new player in, it's always like what's the word? Like a honeymoon period, I guess is what people normally use for it. So I think we'll kind of get that sort of, I guess, morale boost. Because as well, if you remember, myself, Paddy, Molf, Ripper, and Kellex, we've worked with SparkR for a year prior to. So it's very exciting. Like, we're excited for him as well. You know what I mean? Like, it's essentially a former teammate for these last 6 months, you know, because we've been separated. So it's like a welcoming back almost, So I think everyone's very excited for him and excited for him to get his shot in the league. And I think once he's here, I think his play will speak for itself.
Right. Now that you talk about a little bit about feeling and the morale of it, I guess the one, and this is the final question in this, but one of my favorite topics in esports in general is the momentum and the confidence that comes with momentum. Now, of course, you guys know what it feels like to be confident and to feel unbeatable. Is this a new situation where you maybe have to learn to win again in quote unquotes? And do you think there's this team's problems will dissolve as soon as you guys get going?
I think, like, as much as you don't want it to be an issue, there's always an element of it in the back of your mind, right? We are still searching for this first win. And certainly our strength of schedule has not made it easy, or at least in this cycle. And also, I think if you compare it to Hurricane, like you said, we felt unbeatable. Like, I don't know if you remember the one where there was a grand final where Danid's internet went out and we had to play with Unter and we go 2 maps down before Danid manages to run across town to his mum's house, who has power. Yeah. And then Danid comes back in and obviously we are 2-0 down in a best of 5 and it feels it, But as soon as we were all back, it felt like there was even before we had started the third map, there was no way we were losing that final then. And I think there is still elements of that, you know, like when today, obviously we played Dorado, we are 2 maps down. They then pushed Dorado, a typically very difficult map to finish with, like, I think it was like 234 or something in the time bank. Very good time. And we weren't phased. Like, people weren't worried. We weren't panicking. Obviously, we switched up a comp because we felt like maybe this is just wrong. Like, if it's not working, just change it, right? There's no point, like, throwing our heads into the wall if we can't get it to work. And I think it was Hattie who said something along the line of, all we need to do is cap. Like, if we cap, it doesn't matter if we have time or not, because it doesn't matter on Dorado, because you get to push it so far in overtime. It doesn't actually matter if they have 2.5 minutes more than us or anything. Like, as long as we cap, it's fine. Like, this is still winnable. And I think that certainly speaks to, like, I guess the Hurricane kind of attitude. So as much as it definitely is a monkey on our back, this absence of a win, I think we still have, I'm going to say the Hurricane spirit, but that sounds really cheesy, and I'm almost hating myself as the words come out of my mouth. But hopefully you give it, you get what I mean.
Right. Yeah. Then we hope the Hurricane spirit stays strong, and wish you good luck against Texas, and then for the second half of the season. Thank you.
Cheers.